Hello, this is Chapter 6, Geometric Construction Tools. The first thing I'm going to do is open up a new part and make sure the units are in millimeter gram second. Now, the large portion of this chapter is devoted to walking you through a moderately complex sketch in somewhat detail. So I would encourage all of you to read the chapter and follow through the strategies that it takes in creating this base sketch for this gasket. I'm going to be working off of page 616. You can see this nearly finalized sketch that is merely missing fillets. And I'm going to show you the process that I would do to create this, as opposed to just rehashing and going through what the book does. So we're going to start a sketch on the front plane, just like the book, and I'm going to start drawing the basic shape. Okay? So there'll probably be some similarities and some difference. One noticeable difference is what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, and rather than drawing a circle and placing the circle, I'm just going to simply use my knowledge of the shortcuts, and I'm going to click this, and if you remember from Chapter 4, if we come back and come out, we can see we've just created a circle. This eliminates the need to add this particular relation. It eliminates the need to extend or diminish entries, and all I have to do is simply add this coincident mate between the center point of this arc and the line. And as you can see, that's a pretty good rough sketch, very quick. It's significantly quicker than the book takes. But you know, I think the book does show how you can manipulate various sketches to do as you need. The other thing I'm going to do is, as I put in dimensions, I'm going to dimension them right away. I find that the reason for this is because when you put a dimension in a rough sketch, and that dimension is going to be very, very different than what it is at the moment. So right now you can see this is 194. Let's pretend that it was, you know, for whatever reason, this entire sketch was shrunk down to the size of, you know, it was 1 or 2. Or let's say that this 194 needed to become something significantly smaller, say 2 or 1. You can see that by changing that dimension that drastically, it severely altered the shape of the sketch. Thus, usually I like to dimension it as I go along. That way, if anything's a little bit off, I can drag and drop things as needed, as opposed to maybe having to redo the dimensions. So I'm just going to finish dimensioning this. Again, I'm using the same dimensions that are in the book on page 616. All right, you see that one did a little bit of odd things. It severely decreased the size of our circle, but not such that we can't add the radius and just bring it back right there. And then one last dimension. So from that top to the bottom, and that's just a simple 120. Now, if we look, we still have the sketch is blue. That should immediately raise a red flag to us. And I'm just gonna sort of click and drag it around, and we can see that it's holding its shape pretty well. So again, this is just locationally challenged. It needs an origin. So I'm just going to drag this to the origin, and there we have it. It's a completely black sketch that we're happy with. Okay, so moving on from page 616, apologies. This is one of the few instances where I might actually use sketch filleting. I know in the previous chapter, I mentioned that sketch filleting it can do some weird things. I'm going to try to show you a little bit what I'm talking about, but we will use it in this case. So I'm going to click sketch fillet up here, type in the 20 millimeter radius, and we'll leave this keep constrained corners check. I may try to uncheck this for one of these, and we'll see what that changes. So I'm going to click this, click this, click this, and I'm going to leave this one to unconstrain later. So we're just going to hit OK. And now we can see that it's still black. Now that's a good sign. That means that, you know, it's not easily modifiable, and it adds all these crazy relations. It adds these tangencies, these equivalency relations, and we have this new dimension, which is our radius. So I'm gonna click OK for the sketch. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna uncheck this. I'm gonna click this corner. So here's an example of why I don't particularly like the sketch fillet. By no longer keeping the corners constrained, this corner has geometry relations, ideally, namely coincidency with the origin, as well as intersections between these points over here. And these are the sketch fillet tool is going to want to delete these relations. So if I click yes, then what's going to happen is, okay, now our sketch is blue. That's kind of annoying. Now we have to go figure out, well, why is it blue? Why, and now we have to re-add these relations, and it becomes a pain. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to hold Control, and I'm just going to add coincident relation with that horizontal line and a coincident relation with that vertical line. So you can see how, again, if I go into the sketch tool, you always want to make sure this keep constrained corners is selected, and be aware of that. And the easiest sign to tell whether sketch fillet has screwed up your sketch is, save sketch fillet until the very end when you have a fully defined sketch, and then you can easily see, well, if after you use sketch fillet there's any blue or anything undefined, it's created a problem and you need to make sure it's defined. So, it's another lesson in always make sure your sketches are fully defined before you use them. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to extrude this. We're just going to extrude this sketch. So I'm selecting the sketch. We're going to extrude at 5 millimeters. Now, what the book is going to do next is the book's going to go through the procedure of choosing profiles versus contours. I'm going to do that a little bit later. So if you're following me along, you can sort of skip pages 20, and 20, 21, and 22, and if you can go up to 623, that's where I'm going to be coming up, and we're going to do the offset extruded cut feature. So what this is this is just simply an extruded cut, and essentially it's the same shape, just in a little bit. So rather than having to redraw the shape and redimension it, we can use a combination of the convert entities and offset entities. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click convert entities. It's up here at the top, and you can see this is asking for entities to convert. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this line, this edge, you can see it, and I can go through and I can add these other edges, or if I click this face, I can just click this whole face. Alright, so I'm going to delete these edges just by clicking delete. I'm going to do this face, and what we're going to see is when we hit OK, we can see, now we're in a sketch, and we can see that we got all these different lines, and there's this green relation called on edge, and that's basically saying that this line is the edge of this face. Now, I could have also gone through and selected it line by line, or again, select the face. Sometimes, if you select the face, it won't do a line for whatever reason. Maybe it's a tangent line and it's not an actual edge. In that case, you'd be best to just select the line. But always try face first before you make more work for yourself. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do offset entities. And we're going to select this, and it's smart enough that it actually goes around and loops and selects everything. We can have it so that it does not do that by unselecting this select chain, and we've got a few different things here. We can do bidirectional, goes in both directions, reverse, goes in the opposite direction. This is what we want. We know it's 15 millimeters. And we can also make the base construction. So if we check that, I'm going to show you what that's going to do right now. So if you look right now, this is solid lines. So if I hit OK, now this is not. This is what's called the construction line. Now I touched a little bit on that in Chapter 4. I would suggest making this construction lines in this case. So what we're going to do, we have this nice black sketch. It's fully defined based off of the geometry we already created. Now, it's worth noting that, let's say you had, your original sketch was not fully defined and you extruded it. This would still be fully defined because it's based off of an edge that's a hard edge. Now what would happen is if you went back and edited that undefined sketch, this will also edit based off of it. So it's sort of undefined in even though it would turn black. But again, you can simplify yourself the headache of determining how things change and whether things are undefined by always making sure your sketches are defined. If there's one thing that we're trying to teach you in this course, it's make sure your sketches are fully defined. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this fully defined sketch and we're going to extruded cut it. We're just going to go through all, and there we have it. We have the nice gasket. Now what I'd like to do is I'm actually going to go through this sketch. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to show you what would happen if, say, we had not chosen this offset. So what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to essentially delete everything, and I'm going to reconvert the face. So convert entities, click the face, select check, and now I'm going to do offset entities. And now we're going to see what would happen if we did not make the base construction. Again, we're selecting all the way through, other side, and now we're going to exit the sketch. And now, well, wait a minute, this doesn't look quite the same. So let's go into edit feature, and we can see that we've got this outer profile and then this inner profile, and what it's done is it's chosen between these two. But we don't want that. We want it to only select on the inside. So what we can do is we can basically have it disregard all these other sketch entities if we go to selected contours. Now this is sort of what the book did on between pages 20 and 22. It actually had you draw a new sketch and chose through different contours that way. We're just going to do it right here. We're going to click selected contours. Make sure you have clicked in there. It won't do anything, but it makes sure that the active one as opposed to this one. And now we can see that we've got this red section that comes up. And now if we click the center, now we see the yellow previews changed, and we see the sketch 2 region 1. And now you can see that it's going to cut the middle. And if we click this as well, now it's going to cut the whole thing. We don't want that, so I can just go in and delete this. And now we're back to where we started. Again, we don't want to, so we're just going to click this. Okay? And now we're back to where we are. So be aware that if you have a sketch with other entities that aren't necessarily, and it's not a nice contour, you can do a couple of different things. One, you can make them construction lines, because that's what we did before. Or you can go into the extrudes or extrude cuts and select contours manually. Now what I'm going to do, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a sketch that I made similar to page 20. And as you can see, this is kind of a similar sketch, except rather than fillets, we have actual circles, dimension to the same spot, and then we have this triangle right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this sketch. Now you can see, right now it's only extruding the rectangle because it's all based off of contours. So what I'm doing is you can see the different selections, and I can choose regions. I'll just clear the regions, and I want to point you out to this. Now, let's say I want to extrude this triangle. It's not letting me extrude. It's not letting me select it, and I'm going to show you why. When I drew this sketch, I made sure to not quite connect that triangle. So this is what's called an open profile. An open profile doesn't create a region, and thus it's somewhat difficult to extrude. So if you're having trouble selecting a region, you might want to zoom in on some of the corners and just make sure that it is indeed a closed profile. And the last thing I'm going to try to show you is I'm going to try to show you a little error that can occur. So I'm going to extrude here, and I'm going to extrude here, and then I'm going to extrude there. All right, so you can see it's basically making this block-like shape that comes to this point. I'm going to hit OK. Now, you get this rebuild error. The reason for this is essentially what you're trying to do is right there at the tangency point between this circle and this line, there's nothing. And right next to the tangency point, there's next to nothing. So essentially, it's called what's called a zero thickness geometry error, a geometric condition. You've created a part that will gradually go down to zero thickness, and then start. So there's essentially there's going to be one line where at one point where there's nothing, but every other point around that circle there would be material, theoretically. SolidWorks does not like this. I've seen this crop up in multiple cases when you try to do advanced features. So if you ever see a condition that's zero thickness, that's what it's referring to. It's referring to there's a part where you have a cut that's just intersecting an object. That's all for Chapter 6.